I need to pull this up. Yeah, get up. Get. Mia, get off. I need this fabric. It's not a bed. I have made a costume in 3 days, and it's going to be part of a series that I am starting on my channel, and it's called the Test of Threads Challenge. So basically it's a design challenge. There's going to be some rules and requirements that I have to meet in order to make an end product. And I thought, since it's going to be Halloween and I kind of waited till the last minute, this would be the perfect time to start my little Test of Threads challenge. For the rules of challenge. Number 1, I have to be under $50. That's going to be my budget for this project, which is going to be rough. Number 2, I have a time limit of 3 days. And number 3, I must have some kind of personal storage on my costume, such as like pockets or purses, something like that. So kind of opened the door of my inspiration. There's this really fun movie called Kung Fury, and there's a character on there. Her name is Barbariana, and she's one of the coolest people I've seen in the movie. I wanted to be her as soon as I saw her. So I took to Pinterest and I got a bunch of inspiration pictures, and then I went to sketching out my idea. Now, things are going to be changing, so this is kind of just a rough sketch idea of what I would like. So right now, I'm making the little bustier part of my costume. So after I did my bustier pattern, I jumped to my little skirt waistband pattern, and I'm just measuring out my waistband, and I'm going to make a little rectangle. I'm just tracing my waist measurement onto another piece of paper because now I'm going to be making my little skirt pattern. And it's just a basic little rectangle. But now what I'm going to do with my rectangle is I'm going to make a bunch of slash lines, which this might look a bit weird, but I didn't want to make like a circle skirt or go through the trouble of trying to make like a quarter skirt or something like that. So I just went ahead and just made a rectangle and made little slash marks, and then I'm going to cut the slash marks to, but not through, my waist. As you can see, it's labeled waist. Do not cut all the way through. And the reason for this is because you want to spread these little slash marks, and you don't want to spread your waistband. You want that to stay the same. And so it looks pretty good to me. So what I like to do is just take some masking tape and kind of just tape down my little slashy things. I like to tape some scrap pieces of my paper on the gaps. That way it's not just like a hole with some tape flying around. It just gives it more stability. So once I get my pattern finished, I go ahead and cut some muslin out in the shape of my pattern piece that I just made, and then I drape it onto my form. I did not want to use a bunch of muslin to make this pattern piece, so I'm kind of just like overlapping on the other side and just making sure that I'm matching up my lines. Once I get my pattern lined the way that I want, I'm going to go ahead and trace out my skirt. And instead of like cutting all through this and like messing up my pattern piece, I'm just going to lift up my muslin and then kind of like trace around the skirt. I make sure to add a seam allowance onto my back part of the skirt that's going to be sewn together, and then I'm going to cut. And then I can make the other side of my skirt. And then when that's all done, I can sew it all together. So for my little waistband, I went ahead and sewed a piece of suede to the top of it, and we're going to trim the excess off. Then I thought adding some snaps would just make it a little bit easier to put on and off. made like a jagged hemline just to make it look a little bit more authentic. So now, going back to my little bustier that I was making earlier, I cut out my little muslin pieces and I put them on a piece of paper and traced them out with my little tracing wheel and put some seam allowances on it, and then I had my pattern pieces to my bustier. Now, I already had this suede fabric, so I did not need to purchase this. So I thought maybe I should add a little bit of fur trim. I thought that would make it look a little bit cuter. So I'm taking some scrap pieces of my fur fabric and I'm cutting it into strips. And the thing to note when you're working with fur is to have like a little handheld vacuum with you at all times, because this fur gets everywhere. So I'm using this stiffer leather for my bustier to put like behind it. That way it gives it a little bit more like of a stiffness, because the suede's kind of like loose and I didn't have any interfacing. Here I am adding my fur trim. I'm kind of sandwiching it in between this like thicker leather and the suede. So now I'm working on my little belt. And my belt has a little patch, so that's what this little diamond shape is. So I'm using some vinyl that I got free from one of my sisters, and I'm going to be using that as like a trim. This black leather material that I'm using is also free because I already had it left over from another project, so I did not have to pay for this again. I accidentally sewed both ends of my trim on at the same time because I was not paying attention, and now when you fold this over you'll see all of this crud on the side. So I ended up having to take out the trim on one side and then re-sew this all back together. And now I'm going to make that little tail part on my little belt that's on the front. I'm going to use some felt that I had also left over from another project, and I'm going to be putting that in the inside to kind of give it more body. Now, I was not paying attention and I was trying to go way too fast, and I sewed my little felt part right in between my suede pieces. So when I flip this thing inside out, you're going to be able to see this white felt piece that I am using for my stability. So I ended up having to undo the whole thing again. So I ended up cutting some more of this vinyl and just kind of trimming it on the sides. Now, putting everything together, I'm going to put my little patch right in the center, and I'm going to put that little tail part right underneath the patch. So now comes the weird part. I made some shoulder pads. Never ever have I made shoulder pads in my life, and I expected them to be extremely difficult. To start out, I just took some poster board that I had left over from a lost and found sign and I made the shape of my shoulder pad that I wanted. So I didn't really have any wire, but I did have some hangers. So I took a hanger, I tried to get it as straight as I could, and then I measured out how much hanger I wanted to use, and I just cut 2 pieces of the hanger. And then I just shaped it into the shape that I needed it for my shoulder pads. And after I glued the hanger piece down, I just put a ton of glue all over this thing. And then I cut out some suede and I glued that to the bottom of the shoulder pad. So I ran out of poster board, but I did have some leftover mail packaging, so I used that. And so I'm putting some tape down just so that I know which side is the front, because I'm going to be covering the top of this with fur. Now I have to admit, these were the coolest things I have ever made. Oh my god, I did not think they were gonna come out this cute. So for my little headdress, I bought this little werewolf mask off of Amazon. It was pretty cheap. And what I plan to do is just cut his little jaw off and kind of make a headdress out of this. And poor Mia, my cat, absolutely hated this thing. What's wrong? I'm sorry. What's wrong? It's just a mask, Mom. Look. Oh my God. Ma, it's just a mask, Moo. It's not real. So once I figured out how I wanted it to look on my head, I went ahead and cut out some fur. And I'm going to be attaching this to the back of the mask just to make it a little bit longer. I did not have to buy this either. I also had this left over from another project that I worked on. And then that way I can make a little tie to hold my shoulder pads together. And then I just did the same thing on the back, except these are not going to be ones that I can take off. I'm going to double knot them. So I also bought some skeletons from Walgreens. They are on clearance. And I'm going to just take a couple pieces of these little bones and stuff and use them on my shoulder pads. And I'm just using some embroidery thread, which I also already had left over from another project. There were a couple of little bones that I did have to like double stitch on there just because they were wiggling a little bit too much. And so now I am going to cut out a couple of strips out of my suede. And I'm going to make those into one long strap. So now I'm going to take some more free scraps that my sister left. And I'm going to make a little purse. And of course, while I was sewing this up, I ended up breaking a needle because my fabrics were a bit too thick. So after getting a better needle, I finished my little purse, and then I used my awl to poke a couple of holes where I would sew my button, and also to indicate where I would cut a little slash in the purse. And that's it. So I think I passed my first Test of Threads challenge. I actually was under budget. I spent $42.88. I hope you enjoyed watching my first Test of Threads challenge, and I hope you have a fun and happy Halloween.